Hello and welcome. So, book 8. Before we get started, I'm going to tell you what I am assuming about you from watching these videos. So, I assume that you are an A-level student studying classical civilization on OCR and you're studying the World of the Hero module. I'm going to assume that you have read and digested book 8 and hopefully been taught it by your teachers. If you haven't, you're more than welcome to watch this video, but you'll get more out of it once you have read book 8. This is here to really supplement your revision and help you prepare for your exams. I would recommend that you have used your introduction to your David West translation. I hope that you're using the David West translation. It's one of the best. And the Listen to In Our Time podcast on Virgil to also reinforce your understanding. As we go through, make sure that you're pausing, making notes to try and help your revision, and I will try and keep this short. So, what are the key events in book 8? We see, first things first, we see the river Tiber. So this is a god, a reminder that rivers, bodies of water, woods, etc. all have their particular deities. So this god appears to Aeneas and he tells us 3 things. He says, don't give up, look for the white sow, so that's a female pig with 30 piglets, and go and ask the Arcadians for help. Then we meet Evander and the Arcadians, a reminder that in book 6, the Sibyl told us, your road to safety, strange as it may seem, will start from a Greek city. So Aeneas goes and meets Evander and the Arcadians, who also put him in touch with the Etruscans, so that Aeneas is able to bolster his army. Your key Arcadians are going to be Pallas Jr., Evander, his dad. Just a reminder that there's then sort of his great-great-great-great-grandfather was Pallas Senior, which is why their city is called Pallanteum, which is the Italian city. That's obviously named after Pallas Senior, not Pallas Jr. So they also say, go and make friends with the Etruscans. The Etruscans are Italians. Tarchon is their current leader. And as we'll find out, Mezentius is their previous ousted leader. So Mezentius was not a great guy. He now fights on the side of Turnus. You'll remember that we left book 7 with a catalogue of the Latin heroes on Turnus' side. We obviously still need lots more men for Aeneas' side. Evander lives, as I said, in Pallanteum. That's the future site of Rome, and we get a nice sort of sightseeing mission where Aeneas gets a warm, tingly feeling seeing Rome. So we're really making sure that we understand that Aeneas, remember, he doesn't found Rome, Romulus founds Rome, but the site of Rome is sort of blessed and lovely and has this amazing sort of feeling about it, even from antiquity, as Aeneas goes around it. So meanwhile, Venus, Aeneas' mum, she goes to Vulcan, Greek name Hephaestus, to get Aeneas new armour. This is sort of a very, very clear competition or tribute to book 18 in the Iliad, where Achilles gets new armour. We see the armour, the shield, which depicts the future descendants of Aeneas. He essentially has no clue what he's looking at when he looks at it, but he puts it on and loves it anyway. So what key themes come up during book 8? If you were to have an essay on various themes, why would you need to use book 8? The first key theme, I would say, is foreigners. So this is taken from the OCR website, where it says that you need to show understanding of the portrayal of different nations. This theme has not yet come up in an examined A-level. So if I were a betting person, I would probably say that this is likely to come up, as it has not come up so far. So I'm constantly going to be making sure that I have planned an essay before I go into my real exam on how foreigners and different nations are portrayed. We have, obviously, the Roman Empire is a mixture of different nations. So the Romans have gone and invaded lots of different places, and you cannot have an empire in which you only treat different nations as rubbish or you ridicule them, because otherwise you're just going to have a coup and you're going to get ousted. There is the possibility of being a good foreigner and a bad foreigner. Aeneas, obviously, he's a foreigner in this context, as he's in Latium. Aeneas's children in the Roman line are going to have to be a mixture of different nations. They're going to be part of Aeneas and they're going to be part of Lavinia. So they're going to be part Trojan, part Italian. Being foreign is not necessarily a bad thing, and we need to think about how each nation is portrayed. So the first good foreigner that we have in Book 8 that we will focus on is Evander. Now, Evander is an Arcadian. Arcadia is in Greece. He has come and settled in Italy. Why is he a good foreigner? He respects Aeneas's lineage. He sees Aeneas, the family resemblance to his father, who he met when he was a child, is enough for him to welcome Aeneas. He offers Aeneas Xenia, a very important characteristic. He has a mixed race son. So Pallas is half Greek and half Italian. So Evander is such a good foreigner because he has assimilated into his new country. He has taken an Italian as his wife and he has procreated with her. That is exactly what Aeneas is going to need to do with Lavinia. Evander is also humble, like Augustus. I'm going to come back to that in a second. And he's religious. As we meet him, he is performing the yearly rites to Hercules, which we're going to come back to as well. Why is being humble most important? This is an extract. I'd suggest you pause it perhaps if you want to make notes, because I'm not going to read it out to you. This is an extract from Suetonius's Life of Augustus. So he wrote histories on Augustus. And he picks out the fact that Augustus is a very humble man. He made it very clear that he was not one of these rulers that would be dripping in gold and dripping in purple. We get things like the simplicity of his furniture. He has a modest dwelling. He has a plainly furnished bed. He wore common clothes around the house. Evander explicitly tells Aeneas in Book 8, have the courage to despise wealth. So this sort of very humble, simple life is a very clear characteristic of the Romans. Evander, like we said, he is religious. Who was he worshipping? He was worshipping Hercules, another foreigner that we get told a story about. We get a little tangent about Hercules and his defeating of Cacus. Hercules was a Greek. He was coming around Italy at the time. Why is he such a good foreigner? He came to the aid of the Italians. They were being terrorized by Cacus. He comes and he helps them and he kills this Cacus, this terrible beast that has been terrorizing them. As always with the Aeneid, keep one eye open. There are always two stories being told. Hercules, yes, he was a foreigner. He came and protected the natives. The thing that he killed was a monster that was native to that land. So he came from another country, he invaded it, essentially, and in order to instill peace, he had to kill some of the natives. So worth bearing in mind and thinking about how that fits into how the Romans actually operated in terms of the establishment of their empire. Aeneas is obviously another very positive role model, another positive foreigner. He came to the aid of the Italians. He's going to help Tarchon. He's going to help the Etruscans. Thus far, the prophecies have really favoured his foreignness. So his foreignness has been highlighted. It was highlighted all the way back in Book 4 by Iarbas, who mocked his sort of more effeminate Eastern style. It was also brought up by a martyr and Turnus in Book 7. So he is very much being highlighted as this foreign person. However, in the second half of this poem, so from Book 7 onwards, these prophecies have favoured his foreignness. So Latinus was told that he had to marry his daughter to a foreigner. Tarchon was told that, and the Etruscans were told that they can't go into battle unless they're being led by a foreigner. So at the moment, Aeneas' foreignness is really, really working to his advantage. However, what I would say is, like Hercules, bear in mind, he's going to have to kill a person, most importantly Turnus, who is native to the land, but he's actually going to have to kill a lot of people who are native to that land in the war that's going to happen. So he's going to have a very complicated relationship as a foreigner, where is what Virgil is saying, that when you invade a country, you have to kill their natives in order to impose peace. Remember back in Book 6, when Anchises was telling us what a Roman did? They wore down the proud, they pardon the defeated, and they impose a settled order of peace. Imposing peace sounds like quite an oxymoron. So we have our good foreigners. We also have our bad foreigners. Very specifically, in Book 8, we have Cleopatra and Antony depicted on the shield. Cleopatra, Egyptian. Mark Antony, not Egyptian, but very much depicted as an Egyptian. They are supported by the barbaric gods. They have a disorganized army. They have all of this wealth, which we've just noted that Romans don't like. And they shamefully retreat to commit suicide. They run away. Cleopatra's got the snakes at her back, and she is pale with the pallor of approaching death. By the way, the exact same line that is used to describe Dido just before she dies, pale with the pallor of approaching death. Why is it so important that Virgil has portrayed these two people on the shield in the Battle of Actium as such foreigners? Well, it legitimizes Augustus's campaign because it portrays Mark Antony as an Egyptian rather than portraying him as a Roman. And obviously, if Mark Antony is a Roman, Augustus is a Roman. If they fight, that's a civil war. And Augustus doesn't like civil war. The Romans don't like civil war. They've just come out of 2 civil wars. And so we have to portray Mark Antony as a foreigner. In that way, Augustus looks like he has defeated this foreign threat to the empire. Remember, in Book 6, again, we have wore down the proud. So he's warring down this proud person, i.e. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. We also got in Book 6, however, do not raise your hand against your brother. So we get told very clearly, don't have a civil war. And so it was really important that Augustus's Battle of Actium, or Octavian as he was known then, his Battle of Actium is seen to be a defeat of a foreign power, not a civil war. So that's our first key theme there, is foreigners. I would also go on to say that Book 8 is quite useful in terms of propaganda. Again, this is taken from the OCR specification, so you need to be able to answer a question on Virgil's relationship to Augustus, his regime, the extent to which they are promoted within the epic, and the promotion of the Roman Empire. This essay has come up several times in various wording. It is a repeated essay topic for both the 20 and the 30 markers, more so the 30 markers. Does that mean that OCR is going to never do it again because they want to come up with fun new things? Probably not. They like using the same essays again and again. So Book 8 is really important for propaganda because the shield completes our trilogy of glorious lines. So we have 3 moments that are key for propaganda, where we go through the Roman lines and talk about how wonderful they are. Can you remember what they are? Of course you can. I'll remind you just in case. So Book 1, we get the Scroll of the Fates, when Jupiter reveals to Venus everything wonderful that's going to happen. In Book 6, we get Anchises and the parade at the future heroes when we're down in the underworld. And then in Book 8, we get this shield where we get lots of wonderful Romans and we get the glorious triumph of Augustus at the Battle of Actium. Do we always think that this poem is propaganda? If you argue a one-dimensional essay, you have not done your essay justice. Remember what I said, always read it with one eye open, with an idea of, is Virgil truly promoting the Roman Empire and the Roman regime? On the one hand, in terms of propaganda, it does depict Augustus as a glorious defender of Italy. Augustus very clearly is acting with the support of Roman gods, the Senate and the people. So SPQR, remember, the Senate and the people of Rome. He is almost doing this for the people. He's a man of the people, and they will support his actions. They support these actions in the Battle of Actium, and therefore we can conclude they always support his actions. It promotes him as a popular leader. And then he rides into Rome in his triple triumph. This solidifies his claim to power. Remember, he is defeating the person that is his only real threat to power before the start of his reign. So, on the one hand, Augustus is praised brilliantly in the Shield. However, you can look at it as something more subtle. The praise of Augustus is so over the top. It is so ridiculous, as is Mark Antony's villainy. You have Mark Antony with behind him, he's got all of these gods. He's got Anubis barking. He's got all of the wealth. He's dripping. He's literally just sort of a pantomime villain. It seems a little bit sarcastic, facetious. We've also got that Augustus was not known as a fighter. Agrippa is mentioned on the Shield very passingly. Agrippa was the person that was the military brains of Rome. And Mary Thornton, a scholar, says that this is a key problem for Virgil in terms of making that Augustus-Aeneas link, in that Augustus was not a good fighter. He was not experienced in battle. He would often avoid battles, and he preferred to stay in Rome. What we have is Agrippa introduced so briefly so that we are reminded as a Roman audience, yeah, actually, he's the guy that is the military brains behind this. And the Romans would recognise this, perhaps, as an unlikely series of events and an unlikely depiction of the war. It would be like a video of, or a story of Boris Johnson defeating Vladimir Putin in the Ukrainian war. We would see that as ridiculous as a British people. We know that wouldn't happen. And so Romans reading this might look at it and think, that probably didn't happen. You can argue either way. Remember, whatever you do in an essay, support it with evidence from the text and come to a well-reasoned conclusion. I would say that they're the two massive themes that really come up in Book 8. There are a couple of other themes that you would want to use Book 8 for as sort of minor evidence to support your arguments if these came up as an essay. So the first minor theme would be young men. Young men isn't a theme specifically, but we do get as a characterization of major and minor characters. We get family and friendship, and we get relationships between men and women, parents and children. I think that OCR have quite clearly neglected Nissus and Euryalus, Pallas and Evander, and I think that it is about time that they come up. So again, if I were to predict or to bet, I think that this might come up in an essay this year. So we get Pallas. This is our main young man, right? He is respectful. He is religious. I didn't have a third R for the alliteration, but he is keen for battle. As soon as he sees Aeneas's men coming towards Pallanteum, he grabs his sword and he challenges them. He's fantastic. He's strong. He's youthful. He's beautiful. He's filled with both Greek and Italian blood. He's a perfect example of what happens when two nations come together and create a young, strong man. And then we've got his father, Evander. He entrusts Pallas to Aeneas, and this is going to be really important because it's going to be Aeneas' driving force throughout the sort of second half of the second half. We get this fateful prayer, this tragic irony where he says, if you're not going to come back alive, kill me now. That pretty much seals Pallas' fate, right? Pallas and Evander in Book 8, they start this chain reaction. We get a whole narrative in the second half of the poem regarding young men and war. So we get Book 8, we see it with Pallas and Evander. Book 9, which we'll go into in a lot of detail in the next video, we see Nissus and Euryalus. In Book 10, no spoilers, but Pallas and Lausus die. In Book 11, we see Evander and Aeneas' big reactions to Pallas' death. And then obviously in Book 12, we see it culminates in Turnus and his death. And he is a young man who is eager for war. So we get this sort of interleaving of both young men dying and their sort of family reacting to that and the suffering that is caused when young men go to war. So this is the first introduction to it. We're going to pick up on it in the later videos throughout the books and throughout the rest of the poem. This is going to be a theme that recurs again and again and again. The other small theme that I would play into a little bit is the idea of the women. So you have to answer, well, you don't have to, there's possibility that the theme of women would come up. It has come up, it came up last year in 2023, I think, as an essay. So will it come up again? Who knows? But We have Venus, both Venus and Cleopatra here. Even though they're sort of, one of them is for Aeneas and one of them is against Aeneas, they are both seen as seducers of men. They use their sexuality and they use their relationship with men to get what they want. So Venus seduces Vulcan to get the shield. Cleopatra has clearly corrupted Mark Antony with her foreignness and her lady sexuality. And that is why he is now a foreigner and he's betrayed his people. And I will leave it there in terms of who else do they remind us of? Where else do we see this sort of corrupting femininity that needs to be squashed out of the Roman Empire? So those are your themes. Do leave me a comment if you've got any questions. And I will be recording a book 9 video soon. Thank you so much.